Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, unlike the whistleblower bill, which we passed into law earlier today, this bill is not as old as 5 years. It was first read in this House in January of 2022 and was read for the second time in February of 2022. We are here again. The bill was again read on November the 1st, 2023. And we are here again today to deal with them. Like the member for Oropouche East, others on the other side have spoken, and careful note has been taken of their expressions. And as a result of our own deliberations, and to bring further clarity to some of the issues that were raised, we decided that we would offer a few minor amendments which should about this time be circulated or should shortly be circulated in order to bring clarification to some of the questions that were raised. Madam Speaker, just let me, before I proceed, treat with some of the issues raised most recently, of course, by the member for Oropouche East. I want to suggest to the member that the regulations of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service provide for polygraphing of persons on entry into the police service, and that has been so for quite a while. And therefore, the police is well suited with the necessary equipment, the necessary training and personnel who conduct these rather routinely. As a matter of fact, as we speak, in the attempt to recruit hundreds of police officers in this year, about 1,500 applicants are being considered, and the police service, as we speak, with the resources and the capacity in polygraphing that it has, is treating with about 700-800 of them. And because of the exigencies of the situation, we would have, through the Honorable Prime Minister, negotiated with our brothers and sisters in the island of Jamaica, and some of our colleagues there in the CARICOM fraternity are here with us as we speak, joining the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and the SSA in conducting these polygraph tests on the 1,500 persons to ensure, as the Prime Minister said in his submission in this debate, that on entry they are well taken care of. This bill is necessary because while we have polygraphing for police officers, and by the way, Madam Speaker, the police service and the police service regulations is the only group that are polygraphed on entry in contemplation in this bill. Whether it's the Judicial and Legal Service Commission, the Customs, the Prison, the Fire, no other group contemplated here polygraphs or is polygraphed for and on entry. So, Madam Speaker, the member for Oropouche East need not worry about this. He raised the question of other scientific methods for testing integrity. And yes, this bill provides for collection of biometric data, the eyes, and the bill provides for other means of testing integrity other than polygraphing. So I think that satisfies the member in that regard. He probably didn't read the bill as well as he should, but there we go, Madam Speaker. Just to mention in the context of polygraph, the Prime Minister would have raised the question of polygraphing and mentioned that a former commissioner, he called no name, walked out of a polygraphing experience, and that was quite absolutely correct, Madam Speaker. It happened. And to make matters worse, pulled the electrodes off, and I was present when at the level of the National Security Council, if I may be permitted to say, when the question of walking out of the polygraph by that former commissioner, very recent former commissioner, the same one who sent the WhatsApp to the member for Oropouche East today, he was asked, did you walk out of a polygraph, pull off the electrodes and walk out? And he said, yes, he did. And when asked why, he gave an explanation that the questions that were asked were not the questions that they were supposed to ask he. When asked further about it, he said, those were not the questions you were supposed to ask. Those were not the questions that came from the Police Service Commission. The question now is, well, it begs the question, how did you know what question was supposed to be asked? So don't like the ones over here, and he walked straight out. I hope the member for Oropuch East send him back a WhatsApp and tell him that. And the member for Oropuch East also spoke a while ago, en passant, about the question of body cams. You see, that former commissioner, he is on record as having purchased whimsically, without deep thought, 250 body cams, not one of which has been used in police operations in this country because it was not in sync with, it was incompatible with the existing technology. And as a result, that 250 at millions of dollars cost to the police service and the government and people of this country is now used on police recruits merely so that they will get accustomed to wearing them when the real McCoy is put upon them in the line of their duty. Waste. I hope the member for Oropuch East will send a WhatsApp message to his friend.
Madam Speaker, I rise on 48.6. He's imputing improper motive.
Madam Speaker?
Member, please, I have to rule. Overrule.
Very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the matters in front of us, as the member for Dago Martin West made pellucidly clear today, are as simple as they are straightforward. We are faced with a serious crime upsurge in this country. The public is concerned about it, and we are clear in our minds that we will not be properly able to tackle this crime problem if those who we pay, those who are sworn to protect us, are themselves contributing to the problem. And as a result, we present these measures to this House for its consideration. It affects members of the police service, the defense force, the prison service, the fire service, the Customs and Excise Division, the Immigration Division, the Board of Inland Revenue. I heard the member for Oropuch East recommending it, but they are in the bill. Clearly, he did not read the terms of it as he should. And of course, the Office of the Registrar General, which houses the land registry, the company's registry, and such likes, Registrar of Births and Deaths. And of course, these measures here as well cover the Financial Intelligence Unit of Trinidad and Tobago. We contemplated the Transport Division, but once we pass this today, we can come with an amendment sometime, hopefully shortly, because they are having issues with officers who are sworn and paid. In fact, so much so that 4 officers of the Licensing Division was recently sent on suspension, and 5 public officers, public service servants working thereat, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, so that the measures we bring before you, before this House today, are very, very important. The member for Oropuch East alluded to it, yes. We have relations with other states of the region, particularly in CARICOM, and the world. Many of the crimes that afflict us in Trinidad and Tobago are transnational in nature, and we rely on our transnational policing with Interpol and other agencies to share information at critical times. We share with them, they share with us. Recently, we were able to assist the Grenadian government in identifying a fugitive, a murder fugitive who was hiding out in Trinidad, and dispatched him to Grenada. And so this story goes, and therefore, they must have trust and confidence in those with whom they relate in Trinidad. law enforcement to law enforcement. So we put the necessary MOUs in place, the necessary protocols, but trust and integrity is central to these arrangements. So it should bring no surprise to the member for Oropouche East. Madam Speaker, as part of my necessary, Mr. Deputy Speaker, part of my consultations with the national community, I engaged the leaders, the heads of departments mentioned in this bill, so as to share with them through the lips of the Law Reform Commission who assisted or in fact put this bill and the policy that supported it together. We engaged the heads as recently as March of this year. That included, of course, the Commissioner of Police, the Chief of Defense Staff, the Commanding Officer of the Regiment, Air Guard, Coast Guard, the Commissioner of Prisons, the Chief Fire Officer, the Board of Inland Revenue, the Comptroller of Customs, the Chief Immigration Officer, and of course, officials from the Registrar General, every one of them who are affected by the measures for our consideration in this House today. And we caused Senior Counsel of the Law Reform Commission and his team to present, independent of the government, so to speak, the measures and their impact and effect on the services for which they have responsibility, and of course, they having a role to play as heads, because this bill provides that in appropriate circumstances, these heads can trigger the call for, the need for polygraphing or other integrity testing as may be necessary. And I'm quite happy to have you know, Madam Speaker, in particular, in light of the fact that one association, and I'm too embarrassed to identify the association now, but one association representing a group of these, and I think I should be fairer to those who are not so guilty, but one association head rather unthinkingly expressed publicly when I presented this bill here in November that he does not support these measures. So I engaged, as we said, the heads of the departments, every one of them, having listened to the presentation, having participated wholesomely in the discussions that went on for about 4 hours, having asked all of the questions that they had to ask, every one of them expressed, Mr. President, absolute satisfaction with these measures. In fact, they were good enough, thoughtful enough to put their responses in writing. And so I have in my possession from the Board of Inland Revenue, from the Minister of Finance, from the Commissioner of Police, from the Commissioner of Prisons, from the Chief Fire Officer, from the Chief Immigration Officer, from the Customs and Excise Division, every one of them expressed support for these measures. And I commend them, and if they want copies, they can get access. I commend these from the heads of these agencies, speaking on behalf of their agencies, support for these measures. There were some questions raised. I think the logic, the need for this is compelling and beyond reproof or reproach. Mr. Deputy Speaker, yes, these measures call for a special majority, but the member for Dago Martin West was quite potent in the way he put it. Not because you have that power, you should simply laud it and say you're not getting it, as though you're doing the government something. It is the people of Trinidad and Tobago that these measures aim to protect. And while it requires a special, or what they now call a supermajority, the law and the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago permits passage of law which infringes impinges upon the established rights in Section 4 and 5 of the Constitution. The Constitution itself makes provision for that. But the case of Surat, which you would have heard about, and Suraj before it, Dominic Suraj, those matters make it quite clear that outside of this parliament, in the Constitutional Court, measures like this can pass muster if a couple things are shown. One, that there is a legitimate aim, no surreptitious aim, no ignobility, but a legitimate aim. And I want to rewrite or restate for the benefit of my friends in this house and outside, because the member for Siparia is not present in the house today. I'm rather disappointed at that fact. I have a very important matter of integrity testing of law enforcement and other officers whose activity impact on our lives in a very serious way and on whom we depend to protect us. The member for Siparia is not here. So let me say for the benefit of those inside, and if she happens to be in front of a television, the member for Siparia, the legitimate aims include to bolster national security efforts, to reduce crime, to identify rogue elements within the protective services and the other government departments of which we speak, to tackle corruption in these services. And the member for Oropuch East told us today, this cannot be the only item. We don't think it's the panacea for all of our problems. We have the Police Complaints Authority, which has a mandate to deal with serious police misconduct and police corruption. And it operates in the jurisdiction, seeking out issues around those lines and treating with them. So this is not the only measure. The whistleblower legislation, which we passed today, is also another one of the efforts that we make. And we have been consistently doing things as a government, trying to tighten the reins and to improve the national security frontier and platform in the protection of the people of this country. The legitimate aims also includes to promote public confidence in the national security arms. And public includes not the general public who the police and law enforcement and these agencies protect and serve, but it also includes the internal public. I told you when I presented this bill here that there are the vast majority of hardworking, decent officers who feel very uncomfortable when they are in company with, going out on exercises, depending on their colleagues to watch their back, if I'm permitted a colloquialism. And they have a good idea by virtue of their close relationship with some that they do not deserve the respect and trust and confidence. But how do you know that? This is a scientific way of finding out when the particular circumstances arise. So the public, which confidence this legitimate aim espouses, includes members of these services who need to know that their colleagues are solid and sound and can be trusted. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, as I said, they raised several matters, and every one of them, I too want to share with my friends a matter that I would have read in the Daily Express of the 22nd of June, 2023, where a young man approached the Defense Force to join its ranks. They were recruiting. And when he was asked the question, have you applied for any of the services, this service or any before, and have you been polygraphed? He told them a lie and he said no. And there was a reason why he did that, because he had failed on that occasion with an application to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. So he told a lie to the Defense Force as he approached them for membership. Of course, it was discovered that he had told that lie, and for that and other reasons, I presume, they denied him entry, and he took the matter to the court. And of course, the court described him as having been dishonest, and the court upheld, for that reason and others, the court upheld the defense as put by the Defense Force in that challenge, and the court saw the wisdom and explained in its judgment the need for polygraphing and the need for confidentiality and trustworthiness and integrity testing on behalf of those, on the part of those who populate these services. And I was quite pleased at that. Quite pleased at that. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, we have many reports of the Commissioner of Police explaining that in year 2022, for an example, 36 officers were charged stemming from 79 offenses. And in 2023, up to that time when she spoke, 19 officers have been charged. And let me share with you some other statistics, because it is important to bolster our suggestion of the legitimate aim, even for the purposes of Hansard. Am I correct? As at May 2024, just talking about the crime patterns in Trinidad and Tobago, 529 persons, 25 persons were charged for murder. In 2019, 103. In 2020, 121. In 2021, 87. 22, 101. In 2023, 89. And it is going to be a little more year to date. 2024, I have the figure 24 here, but I rather suspect a few other persons have been charged since these statistics were acquired at the end of May. Insofar as manslaughter is concerned, 24 persons. Rape, incest, and other sexual offenses, 1,412. Kidnapping, 546 over that same period between 2019 and 2024. Narcotic offenses, 2,292. Possession of firearms, 3,083. As for the protective services in particular, Mr. Deputy Speaker, personnel facing criminal charges in the last 5 years, 2019, 63 of them. 2020, 69 of them. 2021, 114. 2022, 44. 2023, 62. And year to date, about 13 of them, totaling 365 members of the protective services, who are the focus of the deliberations and the measures before this House here today. So this is not pie in the sky. This is not whimsical. The reason why we are here today is because of the reality of these situations and the state's response to it. And we as a government, by all the shouting, we assess the situation on the basis of the best advice available to us. We take decisions, and we are strong and bold enough to stand by those decisions. In some cases like today, convert those decisions from policy to law and to present them for the consideration of this House. We must do that. Insofar as protective service members on suspension, the Prime Minister would have spoken today. And that officer, the police corporal in that horrific gun renting incident in Tobago, a corporal of police, he would have been on suspension and continued since 2008 to be on suspension up until his retirement recently. So he has now gone into retirement with full benefits. But as for members of the protective services on suspension, 2019, 27 of them, 2020, 24, 2021, 19, 2022, 52, 2023, 58, and year to date, well, as at May, 4 of them, totaling 184. And this is just the protective services. I'm not talking about the public servants who are here contemplated as well in relation to disciplinary action taken at the level of the Public Service Commission. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, insofar as we are concerned, we as a government, we see the wisdom, we see the need for these measures, and we present them to you, this House, for our consideration. I think there's precious useful else to say. I suspect from the observations on the other side that my friends, most of whom have vacated the chamber, the opposition benches are very sparsely occupied. The member for Sipare is not here. The member for Oropuch East who spoke, he has departed the chamber. Baratare Sanwan has departed the chamber. The only men who are in this chamber is the member for Naparima. The Patriots? Yes. The member for Mayaro. And of course, the man and the member of the moment. Komuto Manzanilla. I said the gentleman in the House. I mean, you must think. Unless if you have reason to think otherwise, I spoke of the gentleman. And now I can, indeed, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Yeah. Now I can tell. A man and the member for Caroni East, who spoke in this debate but gave no indication of anything that we heard here today. I don't know why, but when he spoke, he was firm in objection to it. And I heard today a bit of a different tone, which I am pleased to have heard. So I commend these measures. And of course, the member for Chaguanas East is in the chamber. So with just about 4 or 5 of them in the House, I commend these measures forcefully for its consideration. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, with those few words, yes, I beg to move.
Honourable members, the question is that a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Judicial and Legal Service Act, Chapter 601, the Prison Service Act, Chapter 1302, the Defence Act, Chapter 1401, the Police Service Act, Chapter 1501, the Civil Service Act, Chapter 2301, the Fire Service Act, Chapter 3550, and the Financial Intelligence Unit of Trinidad and Tobago Act, Chapter 2701, to provide for a regulatory framework for polygraph and drug testing and biometric identification for members of the protective services and certain offices in the judicial and legal service and the civil service, and all other related matters be now read a second time. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it.
A bill entitled An Act to Amend